welcome to Wingback. I'm Elizabeth. This is where I interview my guests, my wingman, whoever that may be at the time, about their craft, their experiences. In this case, welcome to the show, Thomas Suski.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. How are you?
I'm doing really good. Super
Excellent.
Bowl Sunday today, so.
That's right. Who are you rooting for?
I don't have a favorite. I'm rooting for the underdog, I suppose.
Okay.
Yeah.
In that case, I don't actually follow football, so I don't know who that is. Awesome. So, kind of give us a snapshot of you. So you are originally from Boston, right?
I'm from Massachusetts.
Okay.
So the western side of the state. I was born in a town called Springfield, which is the birthplace of basketball. And Dr. Seuss lived in Springfield, Massachusetts as well.
Is that true?
Those are the two claims to fame, yes.
Oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And now the, three claims to fame is you.
I guess so. Yeah, well, thank you.
That's awesome. So what brought you, we're here in Denver, so what brought you to Colorado?
That's a good question. I had not planned to come to Colorado. What happened was I was working in a job that I really didn't like. So I was a structural engineer. I worked in the concrete industry. We did parking garages, bridges, architectural buildings. And for 9 years, I pretty much hated my job, but I couldn't get out. And my sister had done a personal development seminar called the Landmark Forum, and I did the same seminar she did out in Boston, and it created this huge shift in my life, right? And then I bought a van, I rescued a dog, I sold most of my stuff, and then I mustered up the courage and I quit my job, and then I hit the road, right? And I thought I was going to end up in Los Angeles. That was my plan. I wanted to get into film. I love movies, I love acting, and that was my plan. And I went all the way to Los Angeles. I couldn't find a place to park at night in the van. It was really hard. It took me like an hour and a half, and it was a heat wave. So I was driving around all throughout the day, and the traffic there is terrible. So I had to get out. It was 4 days of constant anxiety, and I went north on the Pacific Coast Highway, and I continued on my road trip. And eventually, after a month of traveling, I found a sublet in Denver, and I fell in love with the place, right? And there's more to the story, but that's kind of my new career actually happened after that. I ended up going to the Hypnotherapy Academy of America in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and then I moved to Denver officially.
That's amazing. So you did van life before it was cool.
I mean, I guess so.
What year was that?
That was 2017.
Okay.
Yeah. So
that was before it was cool.
I guess so. Yeah.
So kind of shifting to that hypnosis side. What is hypnosis?
Hypnosis is an altered state of consciousness, right? So I remember sitting in that school, and I had used hypnosis in 2011 to quit smoking, and then 2013 to quit drinking. And I realized that it was super powerful for me. Like in one session I quit smoking, in one session I quit drinking, and I wanted to know what else it was capable of. And then I realized that hypnosis helps you access your subconscious mind. So we have multiple minds, the conscious mind, the subconscious mind, and it kind of blew me away because I had spent so many years trying to use willpower, and even though I got sober, I had a whole bunch of problems. Like I was super anxious all the time, social anxiety like through the roof, and even avoidant. So I would avoid people like the plague. So I'd be like in a conversation with someone for like 5 minutes, and I'd be like, I got to get out of here. I had that internal feeling. I didn't know how to change it. And hypnosis was the tool that helped me let go of the root cause of that anxiety.
That's amazing. So you were still feeling a lot of that anxiety after you had quit smoking, after you had quit drinking too, and then hypnosis helped that, and then helped the anxiety.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And you're still sober to this day.
Yeah, sober for 11 years. I haven't smoked, I haven't drank, and I have no desire to.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
Congratulations. That's a big deal.
Yeah, I was a pretty bad alcoholic for many years.
Yep. Yeah, that can do it to you. I mean, addiction is real.
Yeah.
So 11 years is a very long time. And, so like in the eating disorder world, kind of where my profession is, people relapse all the time. And the myth is a constant thing. The myth is, oh, you just don't have enough willpower. So definitely something that is very prominent in addiction, or whether it be a mental health disorder or an eating disorder, whatever it is that myth comes up so often and becomes stigmatized, So anyone who is, I guess, interested in hypnosis, like, what would you say to them? How could you prepare them for either the process or what is to come or what you've learned from it?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting is that the people that find me is like they've tried everything under the sun and it hadn't worked for them. And then they're like, oh, I'm going to try something different. It's amazing how like chiropractors, like maybe 10, 15 years ago, there was kind of a negative stigma around them and they weren't that popular. But now these days they're, that stigma is still there a little bit, but a lot of that has relieved itself. And especially in Colorado, like there's chiropractors like on every other corner. Hypnosis doesn't have that quite yet, right? So through movies, through TV shows, through stage hypnosis, people have this fear of being manipulated, having their minds controlled by someone else.
Right.
And to them, it feels a little unsafe. But change happens when you have a really strong emotional desire to change.
Yeah.
So the more that someone suffers, the more willing they are to try something new. And that's usually how the process comes. And when it comes to helping people, like I don't niche, like I get bored doing the same thing over and over again. And I can literally help anyone with almost anything, even weird physical things. Like I've helped people with sweaty hands and feet, which is a weird thing that exists with 2% of the population. Chronic pain, weird mental cognitive problems. Recently I had someone that came to me that said, my brain doesn't work right. And I was like, well, when did you decide that? Oh, I had a stroke. And then when we actually went to the first time, it actually happened in the womb. So these programs and these conditioning can happen very early on when we don't even have the ability to communicate or have language, which is quite fascinating and interesting. So when people come to me and I tell them these concepts, they're kind of like, it's a little bit of like, I don't understand.
Right.
So
tell me about that. So things that can happen in the womb stay with you, even though you don't realize it, you don't have any memory of it. So it's just kind of like you embody it though, like your body remembers these things. Or how does that,
I see everything more as emotions. So emotions drive everything. So all the programming is encapsulated with emotions, right? So the interesting thing is that our minds are able to capture anything in our awareness. So all our senses. So even though we're in the womb, we can still hear things. And we can also sense emotions from our mother. And oftentimes that's what happens is our mother's feeling certain type of emotions and they get passed down to the child. The most common belief that comes from the womb that I work with people is the belief that they're not wanted, right? And which happens quite frequently if you think about it. When a child's not planned, the immediate response from either one of the parents is like freak out. It's like I'm not prepared for this financially, all these concerns.
Right.
In a weird way, that information gets passed down to the child and the child feels unwanted, right? And not fully embraced in the world. And now that becomes part of the programming and conditioning. And unfortunately, as time goes by, they continue to build evidence for that And that's the thing that gets in the way of a lot of relationships. So you continue to find romantic partnerships and continue to feel like you're not wanted because they don't work out.
Right. Right. Okay, so there is emotions that we can express that from all of the stimuli that we are aware of, but there's a lot that we are unaware of, right?
Yes.
So let me back up just a little bit, actually. So
Sure.
people can find you as the mind guy.
Yeah.
Is that right? So can you give me just a little brief snapshot of just like a elevator pitch of your practice or your work?
Yeah. So I call myself an engineer of the mind, a brain architect, and the things that I really help people with are unwanted patterns or behaviors. I help people find love when it comes to resolving past relationship problems, and I even help people with a lot of career and money blocks.
Okay.
Right? And then lastly, these weird physical things that manifest themselves that are kind of very strange, like, why does my body do this? Why is my body attacking itself? I find that all of these physical ailments are connected to stress, trauma, negative emotions from the past.
That's so fascinating because I heard you say earlier, you don't have a niche.
Right.
You sounds like you work with a lot of different types of, what would you call them? Blocks?
Problems. Yeah, you can call them blocks, but people come to me with a problem, right? And that's where I don't think any problem exists outside of ourselves.
Yeah.
I think all problems exist in the mind. And
Awesome.
people are constantly seeking for something external to themselves to try to solve the problem, in which doing like the Hypnotherapy Academy and some other modalities like NLP and timeline therapy, I realized that all problems exist in the mind, and that's where you need to go to work.
So, that's not the message that we are so commonly fed today. It's take this pill, do this thing. If you just subscribe, do the whatever, your problems are solved, you'll get X amount of money, and then it's like, well, no, actually those amplify the problem sometimes. So as the mind guy, was it the quitting drinking and quitting smoking, was that the catalyst for your work now?
It was, yeah. So there's, I don't look at things in good or bad anymore, right? There's a silver lining in everything. So even the things that I thought were like huge, like setbacks or huge regrets in my life, I can look back and realize, oh, I am who I am today because of all those things. I didn't want to become a hypnotherapist. I really didn't. Every hypnotherapist I've met was kind of eccentric and weird. Like, I wanted fame and I wanted to be in movies and all of that. But it's quite interesting. The more, I almost felt guided into this, right? Because, I was doing the sublet here in Denver, and I had no idea what I was going to do next. But I had met a hypnotist in Seattle. I did a session up there, and she gave me information about this school, and I called them. It was all over my head. But the school started 2 days after my sublet ended, and I had nothing else. I'm like, what am I going to do next? I'm like, all right, this is a sign, right? And I do see that there is like a synchronicity and a communication and a guidance. And in a weird way, I feel like this is my soul's mission or purpose. And I needed all those struggles and to learn how to overcome those struggles. And everything that I've used to heal myself and change in myself are my tools to help other people.
Right.
Yeah.
That's so fascinating, because I think about like I heard you say you don't see things black and white. So that's excellent. Like, many people cannot.
Yeah.
They can't see the gray. They can't live with gray. Like, they can't live with the tension between two paradoxes existing in one space.
Yes.
I have a friend who recently went through a breakup, and he was, devastated. It sounds like a really toxic relationship. I don't know it personally, but, or I haven't seen their relationship, but, you know, he said something to the extent that it wasn't a total failure. It's like, no, absolutely not. Like, nothing is a waste, you know, and like I heard you say, what did you just say? It shaped you into this. So I always think about that too. Like, well, that didn't work, but doesn't mean it was a total failure. You gave it all you got, and maybe that didn't succeed. And then so let's move on to the next thing. But all that to say is, it's not the black and white. It's very gray. And yeah, it may have been a loss, but it's still forming you and informing you about what you want in the future, about what you can work on for yourself, all these things. Definitely not a loss. And I think I've noticed myself included that, like, I get lost in feeling that defeat, you know? And I can imagine people come to you and they feel defeated, right? And they're like, enough is enough, time to change.
Yeah, because I do have people that come to me for weight problems. And the biggest challenge is that they've tried so many things that they unconsciously create this belief that they can't do it. It's impossible. It's like they are this utter failure. And there's just like, they've tried so hard. And it's heartbreaking to actually be with that because, you know, there's a level of resignation and giving up, you know, and they're obsessed with it. You know, it started at a very young age. You know, it always starts at a young age, and then they become obsessed with it. It consumes their thoughts. They're thinking about what they have to eat and all that. And that's the thing is, your willpower is nothing compared to your imagination and your subconscious mind, right? Right. So I actually felt that same way, and I developed a belief that I don't have good willpower. And our beliefs create reality. So, you know, I had this idea, well, I don't have good discipline, I don't have good willpower. And I discovered that belief and I cleared it out. And I'm like, oh my God, I quit drinking, I quit smoking. Like, people are like, you're crazy that you had that belief. But that's the challenge, is that when we continue to see failures over time, it really programs our unconscious mind to believe that we can't do something. Yeah,
absolutely. And it's interesting because I heard you say, you know, like, we limit ourselves. And crap, where was I going with that? Oh shoot, I can't even remember. All right, well, I'll come back to it if I think of it again.
If it was important, it'll come back.
It'll come back. It always does. Switching gears just a little bit, maybe. Sure. Oh, that's what I was going to say. So the subconscious.
Yes.
For people that don't know what the subconscious mind is, what is that?
Yeah. You know, it's a good question, right? I mean, what if we break it down to what is the mind? Like, most people can't even define that. Well, it's where our thoughts come from, you know, and we can't grasp it. We can't touch it. It's not tangible, right? So it lives in the world of the metaphysical, right? But then through observation, I believe, some people realized or had some intuitive realizations that, oh, there's like a conscious mind that is responsible for willpower and volition and that stuff. And then the subconscious mind, which is the powerhouse of the minds, it drives our behavior. So 95% of what we do is driven by the subconscious mind. And that's driven by emotions, belief systems, thought patterns. Our subconscious mind actually regulates our body too, right? So our heart rate, our heartbeat, the way that we breathe, all the things that we're not paying attention to, because, I mean, if we had to pay attention to how our body functions and how we walk all the time, that would be a pretty miserable life. Our subconscious mind is responsible for all of that, right? So it really runs the show. It does everything, and it keeps us safe, right? And it creates these programs, and it sees threats, and it learns, and it conditions, and it's constantly trying to protect us from reliving past traumas and past experiences where we experience pain, like breakups.
That's amazing. So
Yeah.
the intuition, you can't see that either. You can't quantify it. You can't hold it. You can't put it in your glove compartment.
Right.
I've noticed when I pay attention to my intuition and my gut, it's usually correct. And it's scary. Like, I can't believe that my body is trying to keep me safe.
Yeah.
And you know, some of the stories that I hear or some of the feedback that I hear is, oh, just let it go. And when I let that go, I notice that I'm not honoring myself anymore. I'm kind of like driving down this road and I find myself in a ditch. Like I feel like kind of manipulated or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's a very powerful thing. Is that subconscious?
What specifically?
Intuition.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the challenge. Is it's coming from the mind, right? Is it coming from the conscious mind? Is it coming from the subconscious mind? There's a third mind that people talk about that most people don't know about. It's called the superconscious, right? And once again, this is through observation and realization. But the superconscious mind to me is where really the intuition lies. Like, where does that information come from? It's almost like something's trying to guide us in some way. And I find that creativity, I find where we have those intuitive hits, it comes from the superconscious. And that superconscious is connected to everything. And I would say it's connected to the hive mind, right? So I think that we're all connected, even our minds. So like a good example of that, if someone ever popped in your mind and then all of a sudden they call you, how does that happen?
Yeah.
Right? So obviously there's something going out into the universe and it's reaching that person almost simultaneously, like a quantum entanglement type of event.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, that person reaches out to you.
Yeah.
Right? So those are the things that we have experiences of that it's difficult to test through science and research. But people have those experiences and they know them to be true, right? And more you tap into that, right? You know, what's interesting is a lot of the clients that I have, a lot of people are not tapped into their intuition. And the reason is because there's so much noise and chatter in their minds. So we have like 50 to 80,000 thoughts a day. That's a lot of thoughts. And when we have a lot of things unresolved from our past, it's like chaos in there. Some people's minds are just constant chaos. And I find the more that you do the work with your mind and the more you meditate or the more you quiet it down, then you can tap into that intuition. But it's fascinating to see that a lot of people don't even know that they have this intuitive guidance system inside of them.
Right. Oh, yeah, I have found it. It's almost like you have to like mend that muscle. It becomes like a practice, like honor it. It's coming up for a reason, you know, and I've noticed it has kept me safe.
Yeah.
And it's hard because you do have those external voices or factors that are saying, who knows, like whatever it may be. But so that's so fascinating because did you recently do was it a workshop with
Joe Dispenza?
Yes. Or
yeah, it was a Joe Dispenza workshop, but it wasn't with Joe Dispenza.
Gotcha.
And for anybody that doesn't know Joe Dispenza, he's one of the most well-known mindset type coaches or preachers out there, and he has these workshops that he hosts all across the world. And this was just a 2-day workshop, so it was kind of like a 101 type thing. So like everything that I heard in it was not new, but just sitting there and getting that information was really powerful because I discovered some limiting beliefs. That's where I actually discovered I don't have good willpower, is where I discovered that.
Wow.
Yeah, so
wow,
it's quite amazing.
So needless to say, you enjoyed it.
I did, yeah.
That's cool.
I did, and it's interesting because he focuses on meditation. So like there's so many different tools out there, and meditation is a really powerful tool, but I find that it doesn't always resolve the subconscious programming. Like when we have really strong programs from the past that continue to get reinforced over time, meditation alone doesn't do the trick. There there has to be some processing. There has to be some learning through it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you meditate?
It's been a while.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you do to tap into your intuition? I'm
Oh,
curious.
goodness.
Yeah.
To tap into my intuition, I would say that, I do pray.
Yes.
And most of the time that looks like asking God, universe, whatever you call it, show me what I'm blind to. And most of it is paying attention to details. I notice, like, even in my career, I have to pay attention to the editing, the sound, the lighting, all of these little elements to create a good project. So, when I notice myself not tapping into my intuition, I just either stuff it down or just look the other way or just keep going or distract. And it's so funny because the other day I was in the car and I must have been listening to music or a podcast or something. And all of a sudden, what's next in the queue is a podcast that I haven't heard in months and months and months. And so, usually with the algorithms, they'll play whatever you've been kind of cycling through on Spotify or whatever it is on YouTube. But what came up was something I haven't heard in a long time. And I was like, I don't want to listen to that. Swiped it away. And it came up later. Next time I opened the app. And I'm like, I don't want to listen to this. This person, like, a fine person. I've learned a lot from this person, but I was like, I just need to move on to something else. Swiped it away. It came up again. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to listen. And when I listened, I realized it was speaking to exactly what I was going through in this season, for the past few days, months, weeks. And it didn't give me like any new information. It was just kind of the universe, God's way of saying, like, this is a reminder that what you're feeling is accurate. It is valid, and you can trust it. So when I've trusted my intuition, it's usually there to calm me down, and that answers the prayer. Show me. And it kept showing up. So I honored it.
That's beautiful. Yeah. So for most people, hearing that story, they'd be like, what are you talking about? Like, it just keep popping up over and over again. Like, you're getting messages from God or the universe. I was, if I heard that 10 years ago, I'd be like, I would think you might be something wrong with you. Like, are you crazy? Like, what's wrong with you? Like, I had lived in such a science-based world, and even though I grew up Catholic and I had strong faith, that all separated, and I kept pushing myself further and further away from religion and spirituality. But now I live in the same place that you live, where I'm like, universe is guiding me and it's giving me information and I'm open to receiving it. And it's amazing how when I hit bottom 11 years ago, I just felt like impending doom all the time. I was like, how am I going to get out of this situation? Because I felt like I had to do it all on my own. And there's just something that through this work and opening the door to, and you can use spirituality, but like the universe, just whatever that is, has completely transformed, the burden that I put on myself in life, in which prayer and putting intentions out to the universe and seeing them come back, be like, how does that happen? How does that work? But it's so empowering. And then it's like, it's such a relief realizing that I don't have to do all the work by myself. It's kind of weird, and like I step in, this is my reality, right? And And I like it, and I enjoy it, and I'm going to continue stepping more and more into that. And I think it's important to talk about it because I want more people to explore it. And it was really a hard process to go through this because I was so rigid to woo-woo stuff, right? You know the word woo-woo, right? The metaphysical, these things, right? And, you know, what really opened the door was past life regression work and hypnosis. So at the Hypnotherapy Academy, I was like, I don't know what past life regression work is, which is you go to past lives and you get information. And during that 2-week period of time, I went to 4 different past lives, and I could feel the emotions. I could see the images, and I could see a connection to what happened in those past lives and how they're impacting me in this life. I was like, what did I just experience? But you want to know what opened up for me? Because I had lost 10 years, or what felt like I lost 10 years of my life as an alcoholic. I had this internal clock of like, I need to catch up. I need to salvage this life. So I was constantly looking into the future, and I can never be present.
Yes.
And that was driving the show because I got one life, and I have to figure out how to make this life be spectacular. And that put a lot of pressure on me.
Right.
All unconscious. Wasn't consciously doing this. It was all unconscious to me. And when I went to these past lives, the fear of death disappeared. I realized that I'm not just a physical body. I'm like eternal. I can never die.
Wow.
And that completely lifted all this weight that I was carrying. It was quite an amazing experience. But I continue to have experiences that continue to put me in a place of praying and setting intentions out there.
Yeah.
So I wanted to share that after hearing what you said.
Thank you for sharing that. I can relate a lot. And hopefully, you know, for many people, it doesn't have to get to an epic crash before we kind of wake up, you know, or, and then I also heard you say something that, you know, you were open to a change, or you were open to whatever it is that the universe was giving you. Well, I heard recently that, you know, if you clench your fists, you can't let those things come in and out, you know. So, you know, that's a very good principle to live by. Yeah, it's just amazing what can happen if you prep, like the simplest things, just prep yourself in that way. And I feel like you're already doing like the tiny steps to move forward, you know.
Yeah.
So I want to shift just a little bit from kind of like the hypnosis to ayahuasca.
Okay.
Okay. So many people, when they hear woo-woo, I was even this way. Ayahuasca, you're doing drugs to, you know, get out of your whatever. What is it, a funk? Like, what is it, you know? So I think there might be some miscommunication or stigma around ayahuasca.
Yeah.
For those of us who don't know, what is it?
Ayahuasca is, they call it a brew or a tea, right? And it comes from the Amazon, and there's a couple plants that you mix together, and you heat it in water and boil, and it creates this like kind of earthy tasting kind of, it can be thick or not, but it's very potent. And it contains a very strong chemical called DMT.
Okay.
And DMT has become very popular. Some people smoke DMT and they have these short, out of this world experiences that last like 15 to 20 minutes. But ayahuasca, it contains a MAO inhibitor, which is, and when you ingest it, it kind of like breaks down this enzyme in your digestive system, in your stomach. So it allows for absorption of that DMT. So you have these experiences that last like 2 to 3, sometimes longer, like 2 to 3 hours or sometimes longer. And DMT is also known as the spirit molecule. And there's a book, documentary, that goes into detail where, I can't remember his name, but it was from, I think, the University of New Mexico. It was a professor who actually got permission to do these experiments. So he would do intravenous DMT and put into people's blood system. And it is just like they had these supernatural experiences. They had these experiences of oneness, meeting God, like seeing these beings, these entities. Like it's really quite a wild experience. And I've done quite a few nights of it. So I've sat with it for 30 nights.
Did you say 30?
30
3
nights.
0.
Yeah, 30 nights. And I even went to Colombia and I did it in the rainforest for a period of time.
Wow.
And it takes a lot of courage to do something like that.
Why?
Because your ego is not in control. So your ego is like, no, this is a threat, this is dangerous. Because a lot of people have what's called an ego death while they're taking DMT. So it's when your ego's not there, the ego is the thing that makes you realize that you're separate from everyone else. So when the ego's not there, it's this experience of oneness, that you're connected to everything. And it's quite a beautiful experience. But a lot of people that have had that experience have had really powerful changes in their life. Like it's like a spiritual awakening or realization, and problems that they were facing, like depression or even like the small day-to-day problems, once they have that experience of oneness, those problems don't seem that important anymore, right? It's kind of an interesting phenomenon, but it is quite a beautiful experience that I encourage people to seek.
So you said, I heard you say that you've experienced it for 30 days. Now, is it anything that was similar to your like witnessing or seeing your past lives?
So you can have those experiences. Yeah, but for me, most of my experiences have been kind of going into this other world, this other dimension, this other realm, and I can see like these specific colors and all this stuff, and I feel like it's not my physical body, it's like my consciousness, and is being worked on. And I've experienced the whole gamut of emotions.
Wow.
There's a huge purging process that happens, in which another thing that terrifies people is that you might throw up on it. And people are like, I don't want to throw up. But it's actually like an emotional catharsis. So it's like we store emotions and trauma in our body, and the ayahuasca works with your subconscious mind, and it knows what to work on. And then it moves all that emotions and energy into your stomach, and then once you're ready, you let it go. But it feels really good. It's a really empowering process of letting go. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So that makes me think about dreams.
Sure.
So if I understand, you are, what is your, you've been doing some things with dreams.
Yeah, well, I work with clients and I do dream work.
Okay.
So people that come to me with recurring dreams or nightmares and looking for resolution. So I do dream work while in hypnosis. And then I am starting a YouTube channel where I'm going to do dream interpretation for people.
Okay, that's gonna be a hit. I cannot wait to see that.
Yeah.
So in both instances, both ayahuasca and dreams, the ego doesn't have control. Is that right?
It depends on the person. So, the ego really tries to hold on, so you can resist the experience, but then it becomes more challenging, and then you're gonna learn different lessons. Anytime I've resisted or I've allowed my ego to resist the process, I've gone to some of the most harrowing, scary journeys that I've ever been on, in which I thought I had died and that I was going to be trapped for eternity in this place that I didn't want to be in, which is very scary. But there's learnings in that too. And I think there's a lot of power going into your deepest and darkest fears. And that has happened for me many times. And the thing about when you start, you have to continue. You don't have a choice.
Right.
So like sometimes I'll be in a journey and it'll be like 10 to 15 minutes in. I'm like, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. I'm like, I don't want to do this. And it's like, well, you got to do this for the next 2 to 3 hours. You're in it.
Wow.
And it can be really intense. But there is this surrender that happens where you can go deeper and let go and just trust the process. And that's where people kind of have that experience of oneness and going to other dimensions of reality. And once again, I don't know what that is. It could all just be a construct of the mind.
Right. So then the identity piece
Yeah.
falls away. And then
Yeah.
that sense of oneness is maybe restored, could
Yeah.
be the word.
We remember. We re-remember. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
And then, yep, right. So that makes sense that like identity is how we present ourselves in the world.
Yes.
And it's helpful and it's also hurtful.
Yeah.
Because it can pit us against each other,
Yeah.
by groups, by political parties, by whatever it is. So that's so fascinating that even attaining the oneness is possible.
It is. It's beautiful. And I hit bottom is because I was so isolated in the world.
Yeah.
So I had spent years cutting people out of my life, and I developed this anxiety and this internal shame and low self-esteem, and I just couldn't be around people because I was so ashamed of the person that I had become.
Yeah.
So, the more separated you are, the more suffering you experience. So for me, this is a school for us to learn how to become gods, right? And it's to learn how much power we have. And there's certain lessons and certain levels along the way. And sometimes they're very simple, but we're here to learn that. But all the lessons bring us back into this concept of oneness. And the more integrated you are with your subconscious mind, and the more that you are connected to everybody around you and not dividing and creating division and separation, and having that connection to higher power or the universe, when you have that, that's the trifecta. And when you get there, like, that is where the kingdom of heaven is.
Oh.
Right? So the more that we can step into that, the more this place is awesome. Right?
Yeah.
But for us, is we unconsciously are so afraid. Fear just drives us to more separation. And it's actually a blessing too, is that hitting bottom is a beautiful thing. Like, people think it's terrible, but that's where catalyst happens.
Yeah.
That's where change happens. And I knew that my life was coming to an end if something didn't change drastically. And I started searching and searching and searching. And I got the answers that I needed to create the change. And ever since then, I've just become a seeker. And I just it created this growth mindset. And the more that I put out there that I want to learn more, I want to seek more, like hypnotherapy, timeline therapy, ayahuasca, all these things have come down my path.
Wow.
And just the level of peace and freedom that I feel is like night and day.
How old were you when you hit your low?
29.
And how old are you now?
40.
Okay, gotcha. So so it's interesting to me because at least one of the lows that I hit, I was 27 and now I'm 35 and I can't remember, I can kind of remember what it was like to be, to have the veil over my eyes. But now I can't imagine going back to that, So is that experience on ayahuasca, is that like that? Is it like, okay, you're waking up to who you are, who you were, and then now every time you do it, is it just a step forward?
Yes and no.
Okay.
So ayahuasca is an experience, and it's going to show you things. So awareness is one of the things, right? So now you're going to see these things. One of the big things is it opened me up to a repressed memory of an intense trauma. And that was the smoking gun of like, oh, that's why I internalized everything. That's why I didn't trust anyone. That's why I would
Yes.
run away when I would see older kids or older men, because it felt really unsafe.
Wow.
So it made sense, like, because when I hit 29, I was like, how did I end up here? Like, how the
Yeah.
hell did I end up here? In high school, I graduated, best all around, most likely to succeed. I was like super confident. And then 10 years later, I hit bottom. Like, it didn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
But the ayahuasca showed me this event that happened when I was 4 years old. And that's when I made these decisions. And that's where I started isolating myself and internalize everything, and then that was kind of the starting point. So the ayahuasca will show you things, but you have to do work afterwards.
Gotcha.
So people think, oh, I'm going to do this. I had this amazing realization. I feel great. Lasts for like maybe a week or so. But you have to integrate the learnings.
Right.
Right. And sometimes people don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
And that's an important part of the process that I think is missed with any psychedelic.
How does one know if they are ready to try ayahuasca?
Like we talked about before, there's something guiding you there. So it's your intuition, right? So I share my experiences with people, and I invite people to do ayahuasca with me, or try to get them connected. And a majority of people are like, oh, no, I'll never touch it, right? And then eventually some people will come back to me. He's like, you know what, I'm ready for this. I've been thinking about it a lot. It pops in their mind. Right? So there is an internal guidance system that tells you, and the same thing happened to me. Like, when I was living my isolated life in Western Massachusetts, I kept finding these interviews or these accounts and stories of people doing this. And I'm like, it was very fascinating. I'm like, but how did it come on my radar? Like, why did it continue to show up? And then eventually it was like, I need to do this. And the thing that actually really did it was, someone said it's like, doing ayahuasca is like doing 10 years of intense psychoanalysis in one night. And I said, that's what I need and that's what I want.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And since then, it's really opened you up to all sorts of things about you.
Yeah. It's a good
Excellent.
teacher. You build a relationship with it. So it has its own consciousness. And some people call it grandma, and other people call it Mother Aya. There's a healing energy or spirit that I feel sometimes that comes into my body. It's a beautiful feminine energy. And I've had like physical healing from it. And I know other people who've had physical healing from it too. So I don't know. I don't know what it is, but there is some consciousness to it that's trying to help you. It's very healing. To be honest, most of the people that I meet in these ceremonies are kind of in that position of they hit bottom, they've had intense traumas in their early childhood, and those, like, that's what those are the people the medicine calls in, But it's every walk of life too.
Yeah.
It's like people that just want to have that experience too.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Do you lead trips?
I don't lead trips, but I know like 20 different places in the US and outside of the country for people to go. So I feel like I'm a connector with it. It's oddly enough, people come to me and they find out that I'm connected to it.
Yeah.
And then they're like, well, this is where I live. Do you know anybody?
Oh.
So I do guide people to like the right place.
So I want to hear a little more about the Dreamwork.
Yes.
So you will be communicating the significance of people's dreams with this channel, this YouTube channel that you have or will get going.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
So it's really going to start finding people who are having these dreams, that remember their dreams, and they're trying to get a better understanding of it. So dreams for me are so fascinating. And you know what I just realized just thinking about this? How much I love movies is how actually I see dreams. Because your subconscious mind is the director, is the actors, it's the screenwriter, And that's where I try to tell people, if you want to understand how brilliant your subconscious mind is, just look at what it does to create dreams. You know, it's like if you really think about these wild, outlandish, interesting things that happen in your dreams, and the thing that most people don't realize is that your subconscious mind is processing and integrating, and recurring dreams is an indication that there's a block of some kind. There's a problem that needs to get resolved.
Wow.
So when someone has the same dream over and over again, it's an indication that they haven't learned a lesson, and their unconscious mind really wants them to learn the lesson.
Wow.
And the beautiful thing is it's done in symbols, symbology, you know?
Okay.
And our unconscious mind loves symbols, and we get influenced by symbols all the time. And there's something about like the collective unconscious too, is that it goes so deep that it goes to the hive mind in a way, and there's like Greek mythology or Christianity, like these different religions where the dreams, even though someone might not have been raised or grown up or learned these concepts, your subconscious mind is using these symbols for you to learn somehow.
Wow.
So it's like, it's so intelligent. It's like one of the most intelligent things, and that's why I want to do it, because I just think it's so cool.
When you say hive mind,
Yes.
what does that mean?
Yeah. Have you ever heard of the 7 Hermetic principles?
No.
So there's a gentleman called Hermes Trismegistus,
Okay.
and he was around like 1200 BC or between 1200 to 2000 BC. And he had this inner wisdom and knowledge, and he noticed that there's 7 laws of the universe, and one of them is called the law of mentalism. And the law of mentalism says that all creation is driven by thought. Everything is thought. It's a mind. It's an intelligent mind. So when we talk about the universe, when we talk about God, higher power, to me, it is an intelligent mind. And when you go back to the concept of oneness, everything that is created here is created from one original thought. And then it's fragmented in fractals. And all of us and each of us is a component of that fragmentation. And then we get to create. And we use our thoughts to create. So everyone thinks that like doing is how we create. No, thought precedes creation. So we have to think it for it to exist. And I see that there is one mind that is in control of all of it. And even though we have aspects of free will, there's actually something else, something bigger that's really running the entire show.
Okay, and that's
the hive mind.
Okay,
Yes.
gotcha.
Yeah.
So what I think is very fascinating is that many of the world religions, there's this thing about dreams and how they inform what a character does next. You know, I think about like Jacob's Ladder and all these other dreams in like Christianity, and you know, they're so powerful. I love dreams too, because you know, I will think heavily on something, and then, you know, just send a little prayer that's like, show me tonight, like show me through my dreams, you know, what I need to be aware of. And usually something very profound happens, and I'm like, oh, I never thought of that, you know, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
And in a way, like when you look back on it, you're like, of course it meant that. Of course I was going through this thing, and this was telling me about it.
Yeah.
And I always think about, have you ever seen Sopranos?
Oh, yeah. Great show.
Okay, so do you know how we're often involved in his dreams? Like we see his dreams. And it is very indicative of all like his emotions. And it's so fascinating to me that this mob boss who's in control is actually out of control.
Yeah.
And, you know, his dreams are just very informative of, hey bro, like wake up, what are you doing, but and he can't, his reality is that he can't,
Right.
so anyway, so that's fascinating that one, the religious aspect,
Yeah.
and two, the Sopranos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that show. I love
That's
it.
such a good show. Who's
Yeah.
your favorite character? Tony?
Tony Gandolfino. Yeah, I was like, I just don't. Yeah, he's my favorite character. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I add one more thing about
Please.
dreams that I think is interesting? Is that our minds actually is created in a hierarchical system. So there's many different hierarchies, and a good way to think about them are like archetypes, right? Or parts or characters. And the interesting thing is that people think we have one single self or one aspect of ourself that's running the show, when in fact our subconscious mind is made up of hundreds to thousands of little personalities or characters, and those are the things that run the show, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
In dreams, when someone else that we know is in the dream, we think, oh, it has to do with them. In fact, those parts are parts of ourselves. Right?
My gosh.
And we want to look at what qualities or attributes does that part represent that I've taken on of myself. Now, there could be good attributes, negative attributes, right? When again, good or bad is relative. But ultimately, that character represents a symbol of what, like modeling what that person has, like as an attribute or quality.
Whoa.
It's an interesting way to think about it differently.
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting, because I've heard, like in waking life,
Yeah.
that if you, I guess it's kind of related, but like if you abhor a quality about, or a characteristic about somebody, it might actually mean that it's reflecting back something about yourself.
Yes.
And so I can see that with dreams too. That is amazing. And how like our minds even do that is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the most interesting thing out there is
Yeah.
the mind for me.
Yes.
And it's like, yeah, and it's my jam. And I like, the rest of this place is not as interesting as opposed to working with the mind and going deeper into the mind and having these experiences with the mind on psychedelics like ayahuasca. It's like, it's quite a interesting thing.
Absolutely. Like the mind is a universe in itself,
Yeah.
and yeah, parallels to what's out there, but it's just so like unique. I don't know. It's amazing. Any thoughts on no dreams, having no dreams?
Yeah, definitely. Sometimes people go into a very deep sleep, kind of like a deep REM sleep. And sometimes they just aren't remembering their dreams because they're going so deep, but they are dreaming, they are processing. Sometimes we shut them down because they're too intense.
Oh gosh.
So this is interesting. I had a recurring dream when I was a kid, all the way up until I was a teenager, and then I stopped remembering any dreams. I was like, I don't dream anymore. So what I did was I suppressed that aspect of being able to remember dreams. And then when I started learning about dreams, I started setting the intention like you, which is very powerful. Like ask your unconscious mind to give you information while you sleep. Very good strategy. And you can tell yourself, like, I want to remember my dreams. So I did that. I said that to myself. That same recurring dream resurfaced. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
was that recurring dream something that you were able to learn from or reflect on?
Yes. Yeah, so it was the part of me that would shut my self-expression down.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So fortunately, I have a bunch of hypnotherapists as colleagues. So I did a hypnosis session, and in Dreamwork and Hypnosis, you go through the dream step by step, and you get information, and you talk to the characters in the dream. It's super cool. It's so cool. Yeah. And it was quite a profound dream. And the symbology was insane too, when you start understanding and making sense of it.
That's,
you know?
yeah. That's pretty cool. I've never seen a hypnotist. Now I'm very curious.
Yeah.
I love dreams, and I love symbols.
Yes.
That is, yeah.
Tell me about symbols and why you love symbols, or if there are symbols that jump out at you.
Well, I really like religious symbols. So what fascinates me is like the numerology fascination with, or traditions of Judaism, and what the number 3 means, or number 7, or 10. And I noticed myself, you know, it might be silly, but I tend to look at the clock right at 12:34. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then out of, so I'm back in school, and, you know, one of our professors writes, you know, an announcement for that week. And at the end, it's a Christian school. And at the end, he wrote, reflect on this, you know, this verse this week. And it was Luke 12:34. And I wrote it down here: for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And I was like, oh my gosh, how have I never paid attention to that? And yet that verse has always stuck out to me all the time. You know, it's like an underlying like hum to my life. It's a reminder. It's a constant reminder that I have to keep going back to and saying, where is your focus? Where are your values? And where's your heart?
Yeah. So you see this number in the world on the clock, and you just made a realization that it's connected to this Bible verse, or right, this Bible verse.
Yeah.
And that Bible verse is something that is very strong and powerful to you. Can you say it again and slower, because you said it really fast? And it was really powerful and beautiful. I just want to hear it again.
So I'm going to read it because I can see it from my notepad here. So it's Luke 12:34. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also.
Whoa. That's great.
I love symbols.
Yeah.
Numbers.
Yeah.
What things mean in an imagery way, even like colors, like maybe subconsciously. It's so funny because I had always heard that, oh, you never paint a mental institution, I think it's like yellow or something, because it's supposed to trigger some sort of something. I don't know if that's true.
Yeah.
But, and it's so funny because my friend works at a detox center, and she sees a lot of alcoholics, and they're at their lowest, or drug users, and they're at their low.
Yeah.
And the wall was painted brown. And I remember reading something with marketing, and they said that fast food chains they like to color, you know, some of their branding in brown and like red and yellow, I think it was, but definitely the brown. And so anyway, so going back to this detox center, my friend said, I wouldn't want to be in a detox center and see like shit brown walls. Like, and I thought, oh, it's supposed to be very comforting, you know? So it's like even colors are very elusive in some way. And even just as basic as a snake in a garden and an apple, you know, very Christian and Jewish Genesis 1, you know, that poem that really kind of says this is a symbol of evil, this is a symbol of goodness, you know, so all sorts of symbols like that.
Yeah. Can I share an example?
Please.
So I was at a networking event, and I had met this person a few people for the first time, and we were all sitting at a table together, and it was at a restaurant, and the gentleman sitting next to me was like talking about, and his partner was sitting across from him, talking about this recurring dream that he had, and he was like, it's always Thor, right? You know Thor from the Greek or Roman god. No.
Yeah.
Norse. It might be Norse, actually.
Yeah, it's Norse.
Anyways, there's movies of Thor, right? And Thor, like, just jacked muscles, all of that. And he's like, with the big hammer, he's like, this is my dream. And he's sitting, drinking a beer, but Thor's blue. All blue.
Huh.
But shortly before that, and like him and his partner, like, we have no idea what it means, but it just is what it is. And shortly before that, I'd found out that his brother had passed away like a year ago, right? And then it was just like, okay. And then I started connecting the dots. And I was like, well, what does Thor mean? Oh, Thor is like this masculine strength, like can't like show weakness of any kind.
Yeah.
And then blue, like people say that all the time. When you're blue, you're down, you're melancholy, you're sad. And then people in front of me were talking to each other, and I just went to him and I was like, what I hear in your dream is that you're really sad about your brother, and you don't feel like you can actually process it because you have to be strong and tough and masculine. And his eyes went like, and then his partner is like, what happened there? And he's like, you're right. And it was just like, that's the beauty of dreams, is the symbols are very simple and easy sometimes, you know?
Right.
You just have to ask yourself, what does that symbol mean exactly?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I took a dreams class with my mentor a couple years ago, and some of those symbols came, well, not Thor, but yeah, some of those symbols, I was a vegetarian at the time, and I was like eating pork, but I was loving it, you know, so it was really fascinating, but you know, it got me in tune to my emotions and how I felt towards those characters, the pig in the dream, and the waiter taking my order and stuff like that. So I love dreams. I love dreams.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to say about dreams?
No, that was good.
You like to write.
I do.
What do you write?
I write speeches. I like taking information that I hear from a lot of different places, and I like putting it in a way that's more digestible to people, right? So I like taking religion, spirituality, science, quantum mechanics, and I like to explain it in a way that kind of lands for people, because there's like things out there that are difficult to explain, and sometimes they're a little bit too technical, and I'm always trying to find a way to simplify it, and so that people can really take the information in, so that's kind of mostly how I try to do my writing, is do it that way.
And do you have any, like, you were out in LA for, you just say 4 days?
4 days.
You were out in LA for 4 days. You're like, nope.
Too much.
Do you like to do any like screenwriting or anything like that?
I do, yeah. I mean, I wrote a screenplay. You and I were working on it, even though it's a little slow process, but...
we're in the research phase.
Yes, we're in the research phase. It's going to be a comedy, and it's going to be a kind of mocking religion in a way, and there's just like a wealth of knowledge and information out there, so it's a very fun project. And the thing is like, we're both spiritual and religious, so it's like, we're not like discounting it, we're just looking at the absurdity of it, and that's a lot of fun. And just like, I think the challenge is that people take this life too seriously, and I did for many years. And man, to soften it up and lighten it up and just be able to laugh at like our own nonsense is just like, I don't know, I think it's a better way to live life.
there is some sort of relief and just like surrender.
Yes.
You know, just I don't have to have the pressure of feeling like I have it all together.
Exactly.
Thank God.
Yes.
Thank God. I love that so much. Do you find writing to be like therapeutic?
It can be when you get in the zone, you know. I find myself sitting down trying to write and then stepping away because of just like I can't get into that zone. But when you're in that flow state, it is like one of the most beautiful feelings, you know.
How do you, at least when you're writing, how do you tap into the zone? Is it a discipline? Well, I mean, I heard you say you stepped away from it when you were trying to write, but sometimes I feel like my mind can go, oh, you have this assignment due, and oh my gosh, you need to go take your dog for a walk, and oh, you need to, write a card to your friend who's 600 miles away, or, something silly. And then I'm like, no, I need you here. I need you to put 30 minutes on your calendar and do this. And sometimes I hate it, and it irks me, but I'm like, at the end of it, I'm like, okay, that felt good. Mm-hmm. So how do you do it?
Yeah, I think everybody has that initial feeling. So it's like spending 5, 10, 15 minutes just putting something down, and just, it's kind of like a clogged drain, so to speak. It's like you want to unclog the drain so you get that flow state, right? And usually just sitting there and forcing yourself to do it for a period of time is really beautiful. But for me, when I have moments of inspiration where it's like you have this idea that surfaces out of nowhere, and you're like, oh, I need to get this down, and then all of a sudden idea after idea after idea comes. Yeah. That's the superconscious for me.
Wow.
That I don't think, I almost feel like we don't create individually, like something comes through us.
Right.
Like that's how I see creation in a weird way.
Yeah.
And if you've heard of artists like Salvador Dali or Stephen King, they say like Stephen King's like, I'm not writing the book, something comes through me.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And I feel like a lot of people and artists operate that way, and they describe it that way. Yeah. Salvador Dali used to have these 2 Chinese, I think they're like Chinese balls, like the ball bearing things that you hold in your hand, or a set of keys, I'm not sure. Yeah. But what he would do is he would fall asleep. And when he would fall asleep, his hand would drop. And then the keys or the balls would hit the ground and it would wake him up. And then he would start working because he's entering those deeper levels of consciousness. And then he's accessing that creative center. So that's an idea.
This is amazing. Okay, so that just stirred something for me. When I notice myself falling asleep, it's usually right before, or it's usually images of like, oh, that doesn't make sense. But then I like wake up and I'm like, okay, I do feel creative. I do feel just kind of like that push to be creative. Get the words on the page, whatever it is. Yeah. That's amazing that you say that.
Yeah.
So cool.
Well, I don't do it, but I've thought about this, is like if you disrupt your sleeping patterns or like set an alarm for like 2 a.m. and just wake up abruptly and start writing and typing, like that, you're already so your conscious, like there's different frequencies for your different brain states.
Yes. Okay.
And then so beta is your conscious mind, which is awake, and then underneath that is alpha, which is like a mild trance, and then theta is like a deep trance, and then delta is like deep sleep. And at the Dispenza workshop, which actually makes a lot of sense, so that was the subconscious mind, like alpha through delta, and then underneath that is gamma, and gamma is like this higher frequency, but the way they do it is they put it underneath. So my understanding is that the superconscious is within the subconscious, and to access that you have to go into a really deep state. So if you're sleeping and you're in delta, you're probably right next to that gamma frequency.
Okay, so when you're saying waves, you mean like sound?
Frequency, yeah.
Yeah, so our studio audience of 1 is here with us today. And we were actually listening to whatever hertz of frequencies before you joined us for this interview,
Yeah.
and how each of those hit certain things, or frequencies, obviously.
Yeah.
And then what? What do those frequencies do to us or for us?
They are responsible for everything. Frequency is one of the 7 Hermetic principles, the law of vibration.
Oh my gosh.
Everything vibrates.
Yeah.
Everything has a frequency.
Yeah.
Our emotions have a frequency, right? Our cells have frequencies, right? So as much as we think we're physical and solid, our tiniest atoms are vibrating. Our electrons are moving, right?
Yeah.
So all of that impacts us, right? If you've ever done a sound bath, right? Sound bath or sound healing baths, so powerful. And those frequencies are really healing as well. And yeah, they tap into different parts of your subconscious mind to give you access to learning, to healing, to creativity, like you name it. I had a psilocybin experience that was really intense, where I went to that really scary place. On the other side of it, I had knowing of all things, like for a period of time. Like I knew, like I had a bucket next to me, and I was like, somehow I knew how the bucket was made. I saw the curtains, everything was just like, it was this deep knowing. And then I had these intuitive hits of like, everything is sound, everything is frequency. And I could see it, I could sense it, I could feel it in the objects around us. The fabric of reality is frequency. It's waves, it's vibration, it's movement. And if you can understand that, I think it really changes your perception of things.
Right.
And if you can seek that, you can find creative ways to motivate yourself and shift your behavior.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing all of this. Yeah. I feel like, why didn't I learn like any of this in school? Or, you know, like where do you go to learn like many of the things about dreams or hypnosis, or, you know, it's like everything that you're touching on has been helpful, you know, and practical, and just really amazing. So thank you. Thank you for sharing all of this.
Yeah.
As far as the Mind Guy and the YouTube channel and everything else, so what's next?
What's next?
Yeah. Or I guess, are there any other? Yeah. Do you want to talk about any of your projects you're working on? I know you talked about the YouTube Dream channel.
Yeah. Well, I've created a Mindset Academy, and you know, like once again, people are seeking outside of themselves to change their reality. I have the most powerful set of tools to help people clear negative emotions, limiting beliefs, limiting decisions, and be a part of a community where we help each other to learn and to grow and to elevate ourselves and to shift our realities. You know, like, you know, everybody kind of knows that their mind and their beliefs, but they don't really know.
Right.
You know, like you made a decision when you were 7 years old, and that's why you're stuck in the situation now. Like, that's what happened. Right. And when you find that decision and you clear out the emotions from that event, you let go of that decision, and now you step into a new reality. So, like, that academy is my big focus, is that I want to give more access to these tools. Oh, good. And there's so many powerful tools. One is about clearing out the past. The other is about creating your future, right? Because we create with imagination and our thoughts and our intention. Creation, law of mentalism. Yeah. Right? So that is like the big thing that I'm focusing on right now, is that academy.
I'm glad that you are making it available. Yeah. Which leads me to my next question. Where can people find you?
You can search me, The Mind Guy in Colorado, right? And you'll find my website, my podcast. And if you want to learn more about what I do or the academy, I do free 15-minute consultations. So you can just click on the website and we can have a brief conversation. So if you're dealing with anything, any block, anywhere you're stuck, or even a physical problem, chronic pain, it's worth a 15-minute conversation.
Did I see something on your Facebook about like money?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
I help people in career and entrepreneurs a lot, but it's amazing that money is such an important factor in our realities. And, people find themselves of like, I just can't seem to make it. I can't make it to the next level. And oftentimes it's the relationship with money and the decisions and beliefs that people have made around money when they were younger.
Oh.
So
Wow.
for me, money, your relationship with money is passed down to you generationally, all unconsciously. And 99% of people take on these unconscious beliefs from their parents. So if you'll see generation from generation to generation, it's like people kind of end up in the same place. If you're poor, most people end up poor. Or middle class, maybe people will do slightly better, but oftentimes they stay in the same place. And obviously wealthy people instill this wealth mindset.
Wow.
And there's a few people that can break that mold, but that's because they make different decisions about it. Right?
Yep.
But most people believe that that's their reality. Like, I'm poor, money's hard to get, money's not easy to come by, you name it. It's all in language. That's the computer code.
Yeah.
And if you can find the computer code and clear it out, shift your reality.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah. And your podcast, what is it?
My podcast is the Mind Guy podcast, and it's all about the mind and the metaphysical. So I find really interesting topics, either about the mind or psychedelics or something that I find very interesting that most people don't know about. And I do these like 20-minute episodes and just talk about it.
Wow.
And I research and I talk about it, so it gives people a better understanding of it. And I try to simplify it.
Yeah. Right, into the digestible content that people can digest.
Exactly.
Oh, that's so funny that you say that, because like I will see a very long blog or article or whatever it is, and I'm like, no, just give me like the nuggets, and I do that with videos. I listen to them on hyper speed sometimes because I'm like, okay, let's get through to what I find useful or whatever it is.
There's too much content out there.
Yeah.
Which is beautiful. Oh. You can get anything out there. So a lot of my education is from YouTube. I did get trainings in school.
Yeah.
Go down that path. But there's so much wealth of information that I've discovered through YouTube alone. If you find the right people and the algorithms, like I'm telling you, like same thing. It's like, oh, this video popped up. Why? I click on it. I don't know why. I watch it, and there's this information that I needed.
Yep.
And it's I love it.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
I know. I love that too. And are there any other podcasts or any books that you would recommend?
There's one author that I actually sometimes give homework assignments to my clients.
Okay.
And their books. His name's Michael Singer, and his first book was The Untethered Soul.
Yep.
And then his second book was The Surrender Experiment. And I'll explain to you why those two books are the most influential books. And I still would say they're the most influential books I've ever come across. The Untethered Soul teaches you that the voice in your head is not you. And people think that the voice in their head is them. It's not. It's like this recorder. It's those parts, and it's not your truest self.
Yeah.
And the 50 to 80,000 thoughts you have every day, they're recycled from the past.
Wow.
So 92% of our thoughts are from the day before. So so out of those 50 to 80,000, only 8% of them are new thoughts. So we're just conditioned from the past, and we continue living in the past because your thoughts create reality.
Yeah.
So if you have beliefs that drive those thought patterns, you're stuck in the past, right? And that's where you need to shift those belief patterns, to shift into a new reality. And then the Surrender Experiment is more of the woo-woo, but there's two ways you can live life, if we simplify it. One way is you can just be this individual person, this identity, and you're responsible and you have to do everything on your own. And you have to figure out what you want and what to do, and you have to plan and you have to take the actions for it. Or you can surrender to life and have the universe guide you. And Michael Singer wrote an amazing book about that, and he became one of the most successful business people, is because when opportunities came his way, he embraced them, he went full force, and just, did everything to 100%, even though his mind is like, well, I don't like this. And it's so powerful, the art of surrender. And surrender has been one of my greatest learnings that has really allowed me to enjoy life and be at ease in life. Surrender is amazing. Those 2 books.
Thank you. I'm definitely going to check them out.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
Sure.
I've heard of him, but I have never read any of his stuff, so
Yeah.
that's awesome. Anything else you would like to add that we did not cover?
I'll just add that each and every one of us has incredible potential. And if you don't have something in your life, if you're unhappy with something in your life, it's in here that you have to go to. And it's a decision or a belief that's holding you back. And if you could go inside and find those things and find tools to clear them out, it's so easy to get what you want once you realize this is where you have to go to work. And that each and every one of us is so powerful. And I really want people to know that, and that this is where they need to go. That's what I wanted to add.
And it's so hard to get in here. That's why we have you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for this. This has been such a pleasure, and I'm sure everyone's going to love all of these little nuggets of wisdom. So thank you for joining me.
Thank you. I really enjoyed myself, and I love talking about this stuff. And I really appreciate that you've created this. This is really great. You're an excellent interviewee and conversationalist, and thank you.